So when the business started to started rolling essentially, how are you finding like the current landscape for agriculture? Even if
Mhm.
you can just talk about Singapore in specific, and
Yeah.
like the reception to this startup, but then like the concept of it.
Yeah, so I think that comes in two parts, right? One with the
Yeah.
consumer and one also with the farmer and people who are actually in the industry. I think with the consumer, it's always really encouraging that people want to find out more about their food,
Mm.
want to find ways to be more sustainable about their lifestyle and how they purchase groceries, right? So that's a really, really high, like sort of good way to start. But I think consumers in Singapore, especially where we have been disenfranchised from about 2 generations of agricultural heritage of
Mm.
any sort because of this rapid urbanization, I think what's different is that Singaporeans still have a lot of questions about, is it safe to eat vegetables that are grown in a vertical farm?
Mm.
Hydroponic farming, is it organic? Is it safe to eat? Is it, how is it different from outdoor farming? People still ask you questions. Hey, isn't sunlight still the best source of nutrients for your food compared to having something grown indoors, right? And I
Mm.
think a lot of this falls into consumer education and needing to engage the consumer on a daily basis and trying to help them understand all of it. So it's a lot of customer support, it's a lot of consumer education,
Yeah.
creating content, creating community, and creating a buzz around the fact that, hey, it's true that we used to farm food under the sun, right? Why is there a need for us to switch to vertical indoor farming? How do we then solve the food crisis? How do we produce food efficiently enough, but also bring the price of food down, right? Because new technologies of farming and new technologies of producing food can start off very expensive. How do we get to price parity? How do we make sure that everyone is taken care of at the end of the day? And how long does that take, right? Like if it's good quality produce, who gets to have it, right? I think that's always
Yeah.
something that's on my mind. From the perspective of the industry, I think it's been an interesting time for the entire space. There's a
Mm.
lot of investment coming into ag tech. There's a lot of people starting new farms. In Singapore, the government's been pushing for a lot of new farms coming up using smart farming technology and really advancing what we can do in a very, very small resource scarce island. But I think that's true of every sort of Asia Pacific city, especially as we become more urbanized and move towards city centers. The
Yeah.
question is no longer what happens to agriculture that has existed for years and years, but how do we support the ecosystem that's coming up peri-urban, right, around urban cities, and also inside urban cities? How do we then connect that entire ecosystem? Who gets to eat which food, right? And how do we then get prices on par? How do we get quality on par? How do we also support farmers who are using traditional farming methods? For example, in Singapore, if you are farming out in Lim Chu Kang, which is the sort of like designated farming estate,
Mm.
there is a countryside farming area. You can do traditional soil farming. Oftentimes, some of them still use pesticides. Some of them are still struggling with pest problems. Some of them are still producing at an industrial scale in that sense.
Yeah.
And these vegetables often come at a fraction of the price compared to someone who's running an indoor farm, who has to pay for electricity bills, who has to pay for technology, who has to pay a lot more for building farming infrastructure. And the produce is, of course, going to be a bit more expensive, right?
Mm.
Who's going to afford it? Right. As a consumer, we go to the supermarket. If there's no additional differentiation between your product, I'm going to buy the bok choy that's going to be cheaper, right? I don't feel any connection to that product as well. So I think what Urban Tiller's been trying to do is getting as many people on board as possible from the industry to not comply, but also just explore a new way of getting connected with customers that, hey, Urban is going to pick it up from you, harvest every morning, and we're going to pack it off and send the best quality product to the customer. And in that spirit, we can also keep this going in a virtuous cycle as well. I
Mm.
think
Yeah.
so far, the farmers that I've been working with have been very, very welcoming. They really appreciate the fact that their produce, after all the effort they put in, we take the extra care to bring it to the end consumer,
Mm.
looking really good, really fresh, as compared to something that you might see in the supermarket, right? In Singapore, we import our food, and about 40 to 70% of that food is wasted along the supply chain due to damage, human error,
Mm.
wastage. Um, and it could spend up to 2 weeks on that supply chain. A lot of that nutrition is lost. A lot of the research has shown that leafy greens, especially when it comes to things like baby spinach, it could lose up to 90% of vitamin Ks that it has within the first 24 hours of harvest. Right. So if you think about it, as a consumer, you're going to the supermarket, you're paying for something that looks like vegetables, tastes like vegetables, but isn't delivering the nutritional content that you need or you were hoping for in your vegetables. So I think that's really the game changer that we hope to bring. Although that's always going to be a longer process of engaging the customer, letting them taste the difference. And I think there's a huge part about quality when it comes to a new age e-commerce kind of business. People are like, I prefer going to pick my own vegetables. Who am I to trust you to decide for me? That quality control, brand building, and trust building with our customers as well.
Yeah. So the business has been going on for
about
I guess
9
a
months.
year, about 9 months.
9
Okay,
months,
so almost a year. So where what plans do you have moving forward, with the business or with agriculture in general? Where are you seeing yourself going with everything?
100%. So I think the team at Urban Tiller is very excited to bring Urban Tiller as a concept to as many cities as we can across Asia Pacific. I think we see an opportunity in cities where people are getting more savvy about their food, where farmers are coming up with new technologies and new ways of farming. So that's definitely one aspect of it, and being able to plug and play what we have in Singapore to other cities. And the next component is really building up a platform where we can both advance sort of appropriate and economically sustainable technologies to support farmers, be it with the farming infrastructure, with expertise, and also supporting operations at the farm to make sure that they are a good running business. But also, I think for me, what's really important is talent development in making farming and agriculture sexy again, and making it a viable career option for young people who have so many options of being in a city and working a 9 to 5. What makes it attractive for them to want to be in this industry to contribute to the future of food production, right? And that boils down very much to the dollars and cents of it, right? A lot of the stuff that we've learned over the past years is a lot of young people who want to get into farming in cities that are new to urban farming and things like that. A lot of people lack the capital to start a new farm because farming infrastructure costs money to build. The lack of farming expertise, because having a small garden at home is one thing, I have that too, but running a farm is a completely different game. And I think it's very difficult for someone to justify sort of going into a career option when there's no support, and you have to figure out so many things at the same time. I think one of the earlier lessons that we learned is that, as a farmer these days, you have to do everything. You need to do sales, you need to do marketing, you need to do operations, you need to know how to do all of it on your own. What Urban Tiller really aims to do is then, how do we create a platform for young people to be able to try out this career path? And Urban Tiller becomes the player that says, hey, grow, and we'll teach you how to grow, we'll provide you the space to grow, and how can we then guarantee offtake, right? Which is something that we're doing to the farmers that we're working with anyway. Rain or shine, I'm gonna send someone to pick it up. Don't worry about not being able to sell your produce. For a new farmer, that's the biggest concern. If I grow something, who's gonna buy it, right? And I think that's what Urban Tiller does, is to say that, look, we can provide competitive sort of salaries, we can provide competitive remunerations if there is a business model that works. And of course, customers will appreciate the level of freshness and quality in the produce that we can provide them with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also one of the advocacies for the magazine as well, Greenfields magazine. We're always, we're currently essentially going through rebranding because we want to be able to make agriculture similar to what you're doing, to make agriculture more appealing to just more people in general, and particularly the youth. Because it's a common issue that's going around the world where the farmer populations are aging. We don't really have young farmers coming in. So which is why we definitely wanted to speak to you about this, because as somebody who's young and who's in the agricultural industry, we want to make sure we're spotlighting younger people as well, to show people that this is a viable career option, and also very important career option, I guess, to consider.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So I guess if you wanted to impart a piece of advice maybe to somebody our age or younger, or anybody really who wants to get into the agriculture industry, what would you maybe tell them as a tip or something?
I think there is no tip, but really believe that if it's something you're interested in, the industry is big. There are a lot of people in it who are willing to show you the ropes, but you do have to stay the journey and stay the distance, right? Honestly, because unlike I think being an entrepreneur in the agri space, right? The difference between doing this and doing a fintech startup is that a fintech startup, I know it fails in 3 months. Like I'm like, okay, no one's buying my product, it's not working out. Agriculture is a long game. The relationships that it takes to build, for farms to improve, for things to change, for consumers to change. You need to be prepared to say, hey, this is a commitment. Like I'm willing to stick it out and see how it goes. And don't get too anxious when it comes to like, yeah, there are ways to find people to support you in terms of funding. There are ways for you to find people in the network and build that network for yourself to see what you could do. And all of it is really, really interesting and really exciting. But don't fear that sense of missing out, right? Like I think as a young person, you could do this for a while and it's a skill that will stay with you for a long time. You're not going to stop eating or stop thinking about where your food comes from later in your life, but you can go back to a different job much later. I think there needs to be a new sort of like sense of life in the agri industry with all the different skill sets that young people bring and how connected we are and how savvy we are when it comes to changing the mindsets of people around us. I think that really falls on our generation as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So I guess that would cap up our quick talk with Jolene. So anybody who's watching, thank you very much for tuning in. And definitely please check out Urban Tiller. They've got various social media platforms. They've got Urban Tiller Singapore's got Facebook. You guys have Twitter and Instagram and also LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah, so feel free to check them out. And then if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and we'll get back to you.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, yeah.
Thing is, we really want to go into the Philippines. So if any of you guys are looking at this from the Philippines and are interested in a career, reach out to me. You can find my email address, I'm sure. But we're looking for someone who is willing to explore this in the Philippines and willing to build these relationships. And of course, be an entrepreneur of yourself and carry the Ventilla brand. So, super exciting stuff. You will be well supported. There are operations that are already running, and we just really need a hustler to bring this together. And we really hope to be in the Philippines as well.
Well, there you go, guys. So anybody who's young watching this, definitely get into contact with Jolene. We'll put her contact details on the post as well.
100%.
But yes, guys, agriculture, very important. It's sexy again. Get into the industry. We need you. All right. So yeah, thank you for chatting with us, Greenfields Magazine today, Jolene.
No, thank you so much.
It was really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Okay.